And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the launch party for Virtues of Skin. Somewhere around here is the camera. I am your host and publisher, Catherine Fitzsimmons, and I'm here with our author, Joe Weinberg. How are you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. It's been a busy day here, but the weather's been mostly quite pleasant here in southern Ontario. How about in the Twin Cities?
Twin Cities is pretty nice. It was about 60. It's 59 right now, apparently. Nice day.
Sounds lovely.
I love your
So,
beer, by the way.
thank you. It's my thing. So, why don't you tell us about Virtues of Skin?
Okay. Virtues of Skin is the continued adventures of AJ Gray, the tattoo witch who spends her days tattooing and her nights usually trying to help the office keep the big secret of the supernatural. Um, And this time around, what's going on mostly is a case involving her directly. Somebody has been killing other tattoo witches in the country, and they seem to have been moving towards where she is. And very early on in the book, there's an attempt on her life. So she realizes that this person is coming to try to kill her.
So, obviously, this is a pretty direct follow-up to the first book, Between Death and a Hard Place. So, do you want to talk about kind of the origin of the entire series?
Sure. I I came up with AJ originally, I believe, on a bet. Somebody bet me to do a apocalypse story without any zombies in it, and so I thought of the idea of doing this witch who had to deal with all that stuff, and I just she kept appearing in various things, and so I started building up the character and making a list of all the tattoos she has and what they do, and making rules of the idea of having like a preset amount of things that she can and can't do so that I would have to be honest with everything that came up. And then, the original idea was once I have determined what powers she has, I just have to keep putting her in situations where those powers don't really help. Um,
Does that make it more of a challenge to come up with the situations, or does that structure help?
um, I think the structure helps. I know everybody says writing is not supposed to have rules or you're supposed to break the rules or all that kind of stuff. And I think there's value to that. But I think that the real point of rules in writing generally is to use them until you know them well enough to break them. Um, and when I'm writing urban fantasy, there are certain rules that I try and follow. One of them being no template stacking. So no one can be a witch and a werewolf or something like that. Um, and I really like the idea of being able to tell from the get go all of these are the things that she can do, just this, nothing else. Um, Kind of like if there was a character sheet at the beginning of a book that had her spell list on it, so all the things that she knew how to do, so that whenever a problem comes up, the readers hopefully will think about that list and think, okay, she'll be fine from this thing and this thing, but this other thing is going to be a problem. Um, and it also lets me, when I need to, I can give her an additional tattoo at some point. I haven't yet, I don't think. But, there's anytime you write a series, every successive book, you have to raise the stakes.
Yeah.
Everything has to be the most important thing that's ever happened so far. Um, and a lot of the times when trying to keep up with that as an author, you end up throwing a bunch more power onto the character. And so eventually, you get late into a series, anything that would have been absolutely deadly in the first book is now just a Tuesday, you know. Um, and I don't really like that kind of power creep either. So I prefer to have it where I know all the things that she can handle, and I know that that's not everything. So I'm able to put her in various situations where she has to deal with other things. And that actually, for me at least, makes it easier to do the writing, because when I have to try and figure out how to get through something, it makes it much easier to write her having to do it.
So, since you mentioned presenting her abilities as a character sheet, what RPG do you see her fitting in with best?
Um, Probably the World of Darkness series. So Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension. Um, she would fit very well in Mage, as just these tattoos are the paradigm for her magic. And so this is how she combines her various spheres to be able to use magic and that kind of thing. Um, but in any system, you're going to have the limitations, because all gaming systems choose mythos to be correct. You know, where they say the first vampire is Cain, which is what they say in Vampire the Masquerade. And that one claim presupposes the entire pantheon of that world. Um, it means that the Judeo-Christian story is correct. It means that there can be angels and demons, but probably not genies, for example. Um, and while that's, again, those, you have to have rules for your world, that's one of the places where I most like to get around that, to throw the rules away. Um, I like to have the idea be, at some point somebody says, well, which mythology is correct? And the answer is always all of them and none of them. Um, that way I can have things from all kinds of other cultures, and I don't feel quite as restrained and like I'm ignoring important cultures in the world, you know?
Yeah, I know that that's been kind of a consistent theme in the books is that everything is correct and none of it is correct, or, not quite as it's been portrayed in the common media. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, how that informs the work?
Yeah, it allows me to borrow from a lot of different traditions. It lets me um, pick the things that I like from various versions of, like, for example, vampires. I can decide if there's this element from Buffy that I like, but this other element that I like from True Blood, and then this bit here from some other version, and I can pick and choose the things I like, and then have it be the explanation in world that, yeah, they tell people all kinds of things, because the only thing better than keeping a secret is spreading a bunch of lies. Um, you're not going to be able to hide that there are werewolves and vampires and things like that eventually, or anymore, depending on how you look at it. And so the only way to really hide is to totally flood the market with a bunch of things, many of which are wrong. Um, because if people are using what they saw on television to determine how they can fight one of these things, chances are they're going to do something completely irrelevant, and that gives the supernaturals an edge for survival. So it was kind of a trying to figure out how you could have the modern world working with a supernatural element always there. And you can't really just go back and be like, well, I'm going to rewrite history pretty much from the beginning, because you're going to end up with a totally unrecognizable world. So you have to take the things that have happened in our world and be like, okay, why would a supernatural person want this to happen? And you just kind of look at history that way, or look at current events that way. Um,
Now, does this kind of freedom with all these elements of the supernatural, and you've mentioned so many in the books, even ones that have appeared on page as opposed to the ones that haven't. You've got goblins and werewolves and vampires, necromancers, all of these, having all these disparate elements, demons as well, and having the definition of them being that they're nothing like, they've been portrayed so much. Does that ever kind of come at odds to how you've portrayed uh, AJ and maybe witches in general?
Um, I really hope uh, that the way I portray witches is uh, at least generally in a positive light. Um, I hope that if any of these various things that appear in these books are real, that they are not offended by the ways that I present them. I try and give them the benefit of the doubt however I can. Um, but from my understanding of how um, people who believe in witchcraft think that it works, I try and stick with that kind of idea as best I know it. Um, in other works where I have um, witches doing more specific things, I might actually look up what certain crystals are supposed to do or what certain um, herbs are supposed to do for magical purposes and things like that, and try and be as accurate as possible with those little details, which is kind of like just trying to be sensitive to the culture of all of these things. Um, I'm generally I'm sure that there are times where I don't succeed, but I try to be sensitive to every culture I can.
Oh, that's very, very good of you. And thanks to Mum Guyver in the chat saying grats on the launch. And just for those listening in, the book is officially releasing Friday. So you can go to that link right there, bookread.com/gray-witch-2, and you can still pre-order your copy now. Um, so based on how you've set up the character, kind of set up the challengers for her, that makes me curious. Do you consider yourself more of a plotter or a pantser?
Um, I I don't really like the term pantser. I found somebody, I don't remember where, but somebody mentioned a different version. They call it discovery writing. And I think that that is much more apt. And I'm very much a discovery writer. When I sit down to write, I basically put my fingers on the keyboards and then read a story as it appears in front of me. Um, I usually have no idea where I'm going when I first start doing something. And it usually takes uh, sometime in between writing sessions for me to actually figure things out. I'll sit and write every day at my normal time, and then either late at night when I'm trying to sleep or some other time when I just have time for my brain to just go wherever, I then try and think of things like, okay, well, why did this happen? This thing that I wrote, why did I do that? Where is that going? And kind of mentally do some planning from there. But um, at the end of the day, it's all ADD fueled discovery writing all the way.
So, do you find it particularly challenging to go through the editing phase writing that way?
It can be. There are a lot of. Everybody edits differently, but one of the ways that I like to edit is I'll write the whole thing, put it aside for a while, and then when I feel like I have separated my emotions from it enough, I'll go back and read it. And a lot of times I'll try to read it as if I was reading a story somebody else wrote. Um, and I'll make comments throughout it of like, this feels like you're foreshadowing something, or later on in the book, like, this needs to be foreshadowed. Um, this doesn't feel earned. And so once I've done that and made those kind of notes, I tend to go back in and put those references where I feel like they need them. Um, or something like that. Or if I'm writing and a line strikes me as like, this should be called back to, I'll footnote it. And that way I can find it really easily later. Um, or I'll copy a paragraph and post it below whatever I'm currently writing so that I know to eventually reference that and things like that. So I'll leave notes for myself, or I'll go back through and do it. I'm a big believer in the philosophy of the first draft is just to get the story down, and the second draft is to make it look on purpose.
Good philosophy.
Yeah.
Um, I had a question I was just about to ask, and the train of thought is clanging off in the distance somewhere.
Okay.
Um, oh, yes. So I know that the format of these books, for every chapter in the present, there is a follow-up chapter that is going into AJ's history, the
Yes.
interludes. So do
Yes.
you write the interludes in concurrently with the present day chapters, or do you do it separately?
Originally, the interludes were a whole separate story. They were I wanted to really get to know AJ, and so I kind of like, okay, let's write about her early history. Like, how did she get the first tattoo? Why did she do that? All that kind of stuff. And wrote that out. And then a good portion of that became the interludes in Between Death and a Hard Place. Um, and then I was continuing that story into Virtues of Skin. And then it kind of started a little bit melding into wanting to have a little bit of a parallel between what she had experienced before and what was going on now, and a chance to just have her share certain memories to make certain characters more relevant. Um, there are a couple of characters who are dead before the book starts, and I can't really show anything with them unless I'm telling stories from the past. Um, and so the interludes let me do stuff like that.
So what is you mentioned you sit down and write at the same time every day.
Yeah.
What's what's your writing environment?
Um, it's just I have a computer with a really big screen, and I have usually a some kind of music that has no vocals, no lyrics, playing on YouTube in one screen, and then in another window, I just sit and type.
So always in the same place, same
Yep,
time of day?
it's a desktop, always the same time of day. I uh, I started last June. I started doing TikTok videos, and I started doing one right before I would start writing, and then one right after I finished every day, and I that's helped me really keep up the same um, amount of time writing every day pretty easily.
Very disciplined. What kinds of things do you post on your TikTok?
Normally, before I write, I either talk about the process of what I'm writing about, of whatever I'm working on, um, or some things that I figured out from the last session. Sometimes I will do a video talking about Between Death and a Hard Place or Virtues of Skin or other works of mine. And sometimes I just do general updates on what's going on in my brain and in my life. And then afterwards, I always do a daily art check in where I share what I've done that day and ask people to show me the stuff that they've done. And it is wonderful. They post all these great pictures of the art in progress, and they talk about what they've done. And it's a really very positive community. Everybody's very encouraging, and that's just wonderful.
That's great. Well, it's about 20 after, so would you like to give us a reading from the book?
Sure. Um, do I need to set it up or just start
Sure,
reading?
just let us know where you're starting from, kind of whatever context is needed.
Um, oh, this one really just sets itself up. This is AJ first thinking and then eventually talking to Maxine Defleur, who is my favorite side character ever. Okay, here we go. Maxine is my favorite demon. She's a pureblood succubus, and being strictly submissive as she is, she's more or less the only one of her kind. Most succubi don't care what end of the whip they're on, they just want the life force that comes when the other person does. But Max giggles like a schoolgirl anytime she has to be dominant, and she's told me she doesn't get any actual pleasure out of it. I understand. The two times I tried being dominant made me feel ill. I totally get it. I'd rather be tied up than tie someone else up any day of the week. And so would Max. which is why I'm not her type. That and the fact that because of my tattoos, she can't feed off of me, not even ambient energy. I'm a blank void to her, which means she knows that I'm around her because I want to be, not because of the weird high I get from her feeding off of a little bit of my life. And I know that she's around me because she wants to be, not because I satisfy some primal need in her. A girl has to eat, that much is true, but she can't eat for me, which means all I can ever be is her friend, which she seems to like. I don't know if Maxine ever sleeps. I assume she does, but I've never caught her sleeping before. She runs a bondage boutique on Lake Street, right near where it intersects with Lyndale, the heart of Uptown. She's there from noon until about 10 p.m. every day, helping people get their kink on, siphoning a little bit of magic, that is sexual energy, from them as they go. She's very popular, but not all that successful as a business. Not that she has to be. Apparently, 18 centuries of life tends to come with a retirement plan, or at least a few rather large accounts hidden away here and there. Maxine once told me that she built her nest egg by being a prostitute in the 17th century. I'm not sure if I believe her or not. I know she's been a hooker. She apparently does it sometimes when she's particularly hungry or bored. But I don't see how she could have saved up all that much money as a sex worker. It's easy when you don't need medical care, food, or a pimp, she tells me as she comes and unlocks the door to her boutique, letting me in before the shop opens. It might not be much, but it's all profit, and it does tend to add up over time. I had to move towns every few years to explain why I never got sick, pregnant, or older, but that wasn't a big deal. She smiles at me, as if there's nothing strange about her having answered my thoughts as I was waiting for her at the door. Hi, AJ. How's it going? I'm good, Max, I say, giving her a smile that tells her I'm not here officially, although she knew that already, and that it's awkward for me when she reads my mind. I can't help it, she says. To me, they're both like you're talking out loud. I don't know how people handle having more magic than that. Maxine is a demon, but she doesn't do magic. Too much math. Math is hard. She's not the brightest bulb, but I think she's a lot smarter than she pretends to be. Thanks, sweetie. You want a drink? Last time I was here, Max pulled out a martini kit and got me good and drunk, just to help me find a necromancer so he could try to kill me 3 times. I'm not sure I trust her bartending skills. I do, I tell her, but I was thinking we could go somewhere else, not just get drunk in your place of business. She shrugs, as if either option were okay with her. Why don't we go to Moto Eye? They have sake. Moto Eye is a Japanese restaurant that doesn't serve sushi. Well, they might. I don't know. But does serve these amazing sandwich things on buns and fantastic ramen noodles, complete with an egg floating in it that's cooked by the soup itself. I order 4 of the pork buns and a bowl of ramen. Maxine orders us both a carafe of their homemade sake, warm. I don't often see Max eating food, but I know she can. She puts away alcohol like there's no tomorrow, so she must have a digestive system of some kind. And I know she goes to the bathroom alone sometimes. She goes with other people quite a bit, but not to use the bathroom so much as to make use of limited privacy. The waitress, who has some impressive inkwork of her own, takes our order with a smile and leaves us be with just a glass of water each while she fetches our various libations. She must assume the food is for both of us, like the sake. No one expects me to put away food the way I do. But my metabolism is really high, which is part of why I heal as fast as I do. That energy has to come from somewhere. So what's going on, AJ? Maxine asks. I love it when you come by, but you're usually not up and about this time of the day, are you? I had to go to the office today, I tell her. Got a case of attempted murder to solve. Ooh, fun. Who's been attempted on? Me. That wipes the smile from Maxine's face. That's not good, AJ. What happened? You should avoid getting killed. Trust me. Been there, done that. Not worth the drama or the hassle. She shakes her head. So much paperwork. Yeah, and unlike you, once I'm dead, it's for keeps. Oh, right. There's that too. She gives me a smile that looks mildly embarrassed, as if shame was an emotion she was actually capable of feeling. Who tried to kill you? I don't know. That's the problem. Whoever it is blew up my car with me in it. Maxine laughs. Well, they don't know you very well, do they? That car's been a death trap for years and it's never gotten you before. No, Max, I mean they literally blew it up, like with a bomb and everything. So, that wouldn't hurt you any more than it would hurt me. One of the perks of being a demon from the depths of hell, I suppose, is that fire doesn't really bother you. Maxine has told me stories about sleeping in the hearth of an inn to stay warm. She doesn't like the cold, which makes me wonder what the fuck she's doing living in Minneapolis. But I'm sure she has her reasons. I do have my reasons, she says, looking almost affronted. When it's cold outside, people do all kinds of things to stay warm inside. Sexy, tasty things. I do great business during the colder months. Now, it's not like I have to go out in it. And if I do, that's what layering is all about. I'm wearing a rubber suit under my clothes right now, you know. I have no way of telling if she's joking or not. And it's a testament to Maxine that I'm really not sure. It could go either way. I get back to the matter at hand. The bomb wasn't meant to kill me, I tell her. It was meant to test me. Test you how? Like for herpes? I roll my eyes. No. It was testing my magic, making sure fire couldn't hurt me. Whoever is doing this is going around killing tattoo witches. I'm slated to be number 3 if I can't stop the guy. Only I have to do more than just stop him. I have to catch him. Why? If I don't catch him, he might just call Minneapolis a wash and move on, hunt down someone else. If he skips town without me catching him, then all I've done is save my own life and pretty much doomed someone else. So? So that's not good enough. I need to catch him. Are you sure it's a him? I sigh, and our food arrives. It's like magic the way it breaks up conversations. I take a big bite of one of the pork buns, tasting the thinly sliced cucumber, the plum sauce, the pulled pork melding together, and a delicious reminder of why I like to come eat here. I chew a few times just to enjoy the taste, and finally swallow it down. I have no idea if it's a him, I say. It might be a her, but I keep thinking it's a him, or keep saying that because you're sexist? No. I take another bite of the sandwich as Max pours sake into a glass for me. I pour some into a glass for her. It's apparently tradition somewhere that you don't pour your own drink. Maxine is very insistent about that kind of thing. Because most serial killers are men, and as far as I can tell, this is a serial killer. I thought you said you're going to be victim number 3. She slams down her sake and lets out a hard breath as it burns its way down her throat. She looks quite pleased. Doesn't it take like 5 deaths before it's a serial killer? I shake my head and take a hearty sip of my sake. Feeling it burn my throat is really the only kind of burning I feel right now, so I enjoy it and take my time with it. It sometimes takes that long to find a pattern, but this pattern is pretty obvious. Besides, there aren't 5 tattoo witches in the US. How many are there? Now? 2. She lets out a whistle and pours more sake. I pour more for her. Wait, aren't you a tattoo artist? Like, don't you give those wacky magic tattoos to people all the time? Not all the time, but yeah. But that doesn't make them tattoo witches. Not many people know how to make the ink, and that's where the magic is. Once it's on you, that's just one spell. But you can go Harry Potter all over somebody's skin, right? I shrug. Maybe they let me, and if they could survive the pain. It's not something you get used to, not like a regular tattoo. Each strike of the wand hurts as much as the first one, and the first one feels like someone's carving into your skin with a carving knife soaked in battery acid. And once you start, you can't stop. Spells don't happen piecemeal. Do you know anyone who might be able to help me track this guy down? I ask her, not wanting to rehash my conversation with Stuart any more than I already had. Some demon hunter types or something? I thought you were the demon hunter type. She smirks and downs another shot. I roll my eyes and pour her more sake. You know what I mean. I've got no way to track this guy. No way to figure out what he's doing, who he is, nothing. Oh, that's not true. You've got a whole lot of people that you know didn't do it. You said he's from out of town, right? So anyone local isn't your guy. There, I just saved you 2 million suspects. And left me with how many people come to the Twin Cities every day for business or for pleasure? She shrugs and downs her third shot. You'd think I'd know something like that, but I don't. I used to be more up on that stuff when I was a stewardess. They're called flight attendants. Sure, now. I sigh and finish off the first of the pork buns. Can you help me out or not, Max? I can point you to people who know this kind of thing, but I don't think it's worth what they'll ask you for. There's got to be a better way to get information than straight up dealing with demons. She smiles at me. Though my expertise on the matter is limited at best. Why don't you do one of your witchy spells and just find the guy that way? Or the girl? I have nothing to go on. You could search for someone trying to kill you. That's like using Google to look up porn and hoping to find a specific site. You can use Google to find porn? She says in mock surprise. Since when is the internet used for pornography? Max, you're probably on 1,000 different websites. She smiles. I know. It helps make ends meet, but it sucks for feeding purposes. Hey, could you program a website that let me feed through it? No, I can't program anything. I mean, it could probably be done, but I wouldn't know where to start. I make tattoos, not websites. You're an artist, not a programmer. Do you know anyone? I take another bite of pork bun. I might, I say. She gives me an idea. I'll look into it for you. Thanks, doll. You're the greatest. How did this turn into me helping her? Pretty sure I came to her to get help for me. Maxine smirks at me. Not as dumb as everyone thinks I am, she says, winking.
Thank you. And which chapter of the book was that?
I don't know. Early on, 5 or 6 maybe. But yeah, I went through and found this 2 scenes that were that would take the right amount of time to read, and then put them in another document so I could read them.
So tell us about Maxine.
Maxine is a wonderful, interesting character. She is a classic succubus, a demon of sex and seduction. I've over the years had a lot of fun dealing with succubus in specific because they're such a well-known in our culture idea of these demons that are purely focused around sex and sexuality, and so I just like to be able to play with what that means, and think of what an outlier succubus would be like. And so, what would it be like if there was a succubus who was heterosexual? Because assumingly they'll sleep with anyone. And then with Maxine, it was the more specifically in the realm of kink and the dominant submission space. What would it be like if there was a succubus who was purely submissive? And that's kind of where Max came from. She is sassy, sarcastic, very funny, witty. I hope someday I'll be able to write a book of just her, but I've yet to really find the right story for her. So she just keeps cropping up in other things. And she's a wonderful foil for AJ.
Very much so. Um, how is it like to write AJ's sexuality? Because it tends to come up quite a bit in the books.
It does, which is a bit odd because she has a lot of trauma base around her sexuality, and I mean that in a way also kind of makes it more interesting because she has this experience that she's had, and what that has done to her and to her development, and then the ways that pushed her around for other things. Mostly I like that AJ is very open in her sexuality. She's very more person than body type. I mean, she at one point in this book does say she's an avowed heterosexual, but also mentions that wasn't always the case. So I think technically she qualifies as bisexual, but really I think it's an important part of a human being just to have thoughts about sexual identity and about sex in general, even though I don't necessarily want to have it happening on screen. And her having all that trauma with it makes that easier to do because she has a very good reason to be like, yes, this happened and I don't want to talk about it.
So, what was the most interesting thing that you researched in the course of writing these books?
Um, wow, that is a very difficult question. Uh, let's see. For this one, I did a fair amount of research about things like serial killers and how their patterns can be discovered, and what kind of psychology they have, and the fact that they tend to be of below average intelligence, which is contrary to everything television tells us. Honestly, I think the thing that is most interesting for me to learn more about as I write more of AJ is the culture and art of tattooing. Um, Finding out about how the machinery works and the little details of the the focus that they have on cleanliness and on making sure that everything is sterile and safe is a really interesting detail to me. Um, Part of my process of creating AJ involved, I had a friend, Mike, who was a tattoo artist, and he did all of the tattoos that I have. And I started talking to him about how the apprenticeship works and how the whole experience goes and what he learned and what kinds of things he practiced on and what the various skills that you maybe don't notice are. And then I would really pay attention to how he was doing it. Visual art to me has always been a kind of magic. I remember being a kid and watching Bob Ross, and to my experience, Bob Ross basically takes a paintbrush and then waves it around on a canvas, and this beautiful image just magically appears. Um, and even him explaining step by step how he's doing it, my brain just goes, "No, that's magic." Uh, and I get that same experience watching, especially when they're when doing a tattoo, when they get to the shading part, because to me it looks like they are taking the little needle gun and just kind of waving it back and forth for a while over that area of skin, and then they wipe it away, and it's this perfectly gradient shade that just magically appears. Um, and so the whole process and art of tattooing is very magical to me, and so researching that is a lot of fun.
Have you ever watched the YouTube channel Slow Mo Guys?
No, a couple of times I've seen some. Yeah, like I've
They
seen
do,
the needles, the speed that they. Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing.
Just thinking of that because they did do a very interesting slow-mo video and very zoomed in of how a tattoo gun works, showing the needles puncturing into ballistics gel
Mm-hmm.
or some sort of synthetic skin. And yeah, I found that very interesting as well. Um, Boy, I'm having a trouble keeping on the rails tonight. um, one thing I have been curious about each time that I read this book while I was editing it
Yeah.
was in one chapter, AJ is facing an angry poltergeist that's haunting a hotel. And she mentions that people die in hotels more often than you think. And I'm curious how you came across that statistic.
There is every chance that I made it up, um, or I may have searched and found something on Google that said that, or it might have been that somebody posted somewhere that information. Um, but I tried it to make sure that most of the claims that I have characters make are backed by at least a rudimentary search of Google to make sure that the detail is correct. But there are definitely some times where I just go, sure,
Good enough.
yeah. Um, like in an earlier book that I wrote, there's a point where I decided that um, lemonade mixture helps detect curses on items. That if you just sprinkle the lemonade mixture on something, it'll tell you that it's cursed. And it's like there's no way to check how that could be true. So sure, it does that. I think that as an author, you get to make up anything you want to, and as long as you're consistent, um, most readers will go along with you. But I still like to look up little details whenever I can, because I know when I'm reading a book and I come across something that is a weird little bit of trivia that I knew, it really excites me when I see that in a book, and especially when they get that detail correct. And so I like to try and make sure I get as many of those details correct as I can.
So, what would you say is the ratio of details like that being something that you researched, whether briefly or exhaustively, versus, oh, I just like the sound of this, or it sounds like it works.
I would say if AJ mentions it as just an aside, probably 50-50 of whether or not that's something real or something that she just believes that I made up. If I'm ever describing the event happening, like describing the method of tattooing or stuff about the history of tattooing, um, those are usually much more researched. I do try and look into, where the first tattoos and how they were done, and what, like for her, she has her little magic wand that is the sticker for tattooing. And I did look up a lot of how that kind of thing was originally done. Because, we didn't always have tattoo guns. At some point, somebody was actually doing it just by stabbing a stick into people's skin and still managed to make these beautiful, intricate pieces of art. And that, I love that kind of thing.
Is there anything that you've learned recently that some random fact or whatever that immediately made you say, I want to put that in a book somehow?
That I learned recently. Um,
Or something that's been on the back burner?
One of the things that I've learned recently that I want to try and find reasons to put in books as many times as possible, is that sharks are older than the rings of Saturn, um, and older than trees, and older than fire, and older than bones. Um, Sharks have existed on Earth for longer than pretty much anything, and that just I find that kind of thing mind-boggling. It makes me want to write sci-fi.
Is that not a direction that you've seen yourself going before?
Uh, I've written a couple of science fiction books. I loved sci-fi. I've loved sci-fi all my life, and used to want to be very much the hardcore sci-fi writer. But a lot of times I find that I get either tripped up in the philosophy side of it, or that I start wanting more hard science than I understand. Um, and it's really difficult to write when you're having, when that this your basic understanding of science stopped in high school, uh, with like one course in college that didn't really do much. Um, I know of a lot of really neat, interesting, higher level math stuff, but when it comes to that kind of thing, I have to just kind of take people's word for it, because even if they start explaining it to me, I have no idea what they're saying. Like I don't have the framework to understand it. Um, like I a couple of weeks ago posted something on Threads asking if anybody knew what the actual fraction for pi was, because in high school they told us it was 22/7, but that I know is inaccurate past like the third digit. Like it's 3.147 or something like that, and pi is 3.141. So it's wrong that fast. And I got kind of dragged for a while because a lot of people were basically saying like it's irrational, as in it has no ratio, as in it has no fraction. And I was like, I didn't even know that that's what irrational meant. Um, there's all this amazing stuff, and some people were very kind and explained things in a way, and sometimes I still see various science threads where people try and explain those kinds of things, and a lot of the times it eventually is a formula that might as well be in another language. Um, so while I love sci-fi, I feel like I would demand too much science for it, or like I said, I get caught in the philosophical reasonings behind things.
So, for this series,
Yes.
you mentioned Maxine, how you'd like to kind of write a story based on her. Are there any other characters or things that you'd kind of like to do a spin-off with?
Um, I think there's definitely potential for a spin-off with the Undercoven that AJ forms and starts working with. Um, the whole idea of the coven system, really, I feel like there's a lot there. AJ tends to compare them to a group of sororities in a very negative way. Um, and I think it would be interesting to see from their perspective, um, because I don't believe that no one is intentionally a mean girl. No one is intentionally just being petty and all that kind of stuff. Like there has to be a reason for it. From their perspective, it has to make sense. And so I'd kind of like to see what the coven system looks like without AJ having her kind of understandable bitterness about it. Um, so maybe following Marcy as she rises up and starts getting into the politics of it. Maybe somebody entirely different. Um, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some very interesting potential, especially because in this book, while the Undercoven's mentioned several times, we don't see an actual gathering of it. And there were some interesting characters proposed as members of the Undercoven at the end of the first book, Between Death and a Hard Place.
Right. I mean, there are a couple of scenes with the Undercoven or certain members of them. I know
Yes.
there Marcy in particular, um, but yeah, I think more of the Undercoven really shows up in the next book. They play a much bigger role, um, but they kind of, by their nature, have to be somewhat secondary because the story is not about them. Um, and while it does matter in the sense of it's helping AJ kind of grow up a little bit and take a little bit more responsibility and be part of her community. Um, I don't know. They can't take center stage too much.
Right.
Maybe unless the whole point of the book was that somebody was targeting them for something, and then AJ needed to protect everybody. But
Which would be unfortunate. All
yeah,
right, so it is 7:50 here in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone. Getting a little dark over here. Would you like to give us another reading?
yes, I have another one prepared. Where is that? Okay. When in doubt about technology, ask a teenager. And I just happen to know one. I don't know if Marcy knows much about computer programming, but I'm betting she knows more than I do. That shouldn't be hard. If she knows the name of a programming language, she knows more than I do. If she knows anything, literally anything about programming, she knows more than I do. I have to wait until later in the day, as Marcy is still in school. She's 18, so she could call in sick if she wanted to, but I think she's trying to actually get her diploma now. That might not have been true, and she accidentally killed her girlfriend Michelle with a spell that almost caused a war in the cities, but she seems to have her life a whole lot more on track these days. Being in the Undercoven probably plays some small role in that. Knowing that Michelle didn't carry a grudge and wants her to live her life probably helped too. And I know I can call Marcy to help me because both of those things happen because of me. The wait gives me time to sober up, and I meet her under the bleachers of the football field at her school. I know she goes there every day to smoke and try to commune with Michelle. Her girlfriend is long gone, moved on to wherever the dead move on to, but I think it makes her feel better to return to where they had their last reunion anyway. Maybe it's the goth in her. And there is a lot of goth in Marcy. She's super tall, skinny in that way that only comes from being on heroin or being too young for your metabolism to have changed yet. Always wearing black no matter the weather or occasion. She has pale skin that her makeup makes even paler, and her lips and eyeliner are as black as night. I almost want to make fun of her, but she totally pulls off the look, and it really seems to fit her personality. She's not a goth for the style. She's a goth, pure and true. She smokes a black cigarette as she walks. I see her light it without the benefit of a lighter. Marcy is a better witch than I am, at least on paper. If we leave my ink out of it, at least. She isn't quite ready to cross the threshold yet, but she definitely has potential, and enough magic to light a cigarette with the wave of her hand. She gives me one of her rare smiles when she sees me, squinting in the sunlight until she makes into the cool shade of the bleacher. Hi, AJ, she says, taking a long drag from her black cigarette, letting the smoke curl out around her face, hugging the edges of her cheekbones in a way that even I think is sexy. Didn't expect to see you until the coven meeting. I smile back at her and put my hands in my pockets. I should be smoking too. I know I want to. But Marcy's young and I don't like smoking in front of her. Or maybe it's just that I don't like waiting outside of a high school smoking under the bleachers. Whatever the case, I fight down my urge for a bit of the old nicotine. I had a question I was wondering if you could help with. An academic one. What, like who fought at Waterloo? She asks. I thought people who graduated high school knew all that shit already. Or that it just wasn't important enough to remember in the first place. Oh, it's not. This is more of a magic and technology question. Her eyes light up at that. Marcy loves anything to do with magic and has been somewhat obsessed with becoming better at it ever since Michelle, which makes sense. I was obsessed about bettering my own magic after I killed my boyfriend and his car. What's the question? Do you think it's possible to put sigils on a website and make them power an actual spell? She takes a deep drag on her cigarette and holds the smoke inside her longer than I expect her to. When it comes out, it flows like a silken cloud, and I realize how badly I want one of my own. But I still resist, though I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know, she says, shrugging as the last of the smoke leaves her black lips. I mean, I think so, but if that was possible, I think we'd have heard about it by now, you know? How so? Even the crappiest website got stumbled onto a few hundred times, she says. If there was a spell, she scrunches up her face. If there were a spell? Marcy shrugs. Whatever. If the spell was on a website, people just seeing it would give it a whole lot of power, right? So wouldn't it be heavily amplified? I mean, especially if it actually did something. And wouldn't that break the whole secrecy thing? If there was a place you'd go online and get a real tangible effect from magic, that would blow the doors off of everything, wouldn't it? I hadn't considered that. So now cybersecurity is part of my job. Terrific. Although, if anyone goes ahead and actually does it, there'll be no way to stop them, so there'd be no point in trying. There's that, I guess. Why do you ask? Maxine wanted to know if she could feed to her porn sites, I tell her. No reason to lie, not to Marcy. Maxine Diffler, is she a witch? I shake my head. How do you know who she is and not what she is? She runs that boutique, Marcy says. I buy my boots there. She's got great taste in boots. I almost laugh at that, knowing it's more than literally true. Yes, she does. Maxine is a succubus. Like a sex demon? Marcy's eyes light up. That is the perfect cover for her. And she's a real demon, like horns and all? Horns, wings, and claws, I tell her. I don't think she does the cloven hoof thing, though. She might. I never asked her. Is she a shapeshifter? Barely. She can make herself look human, but that's it. Nothing more extensive than that. Marcy lets out a whistle. That is so fucking cool, she says. And is she, how is she, what's she like in, is she dangerous? I wouldn't sleep with her, I tell Marcy, which is true, but not for the reason she thinks. I'm trying to warn Marcy off without betraying my friendship with Max, but that's just because of how young Marcy is. Odds are she'd be fine. A little tired the next day, a little spoiled for whoever she ended up in bed with after Max, but more or less fine. I would never sleep with Max because it would be boring. We'd be sitting across from each other on a bed, both trying to get the other one to tie us up. An exercise in futility if there ever was one. Marcy takes another drag on her cigarette, smoking it almost all the way down to the filter, and gives me another smile. Is that the only reason you stopped by? She asks. You just wanted my opinion on something magical? I could enlist her help. She's a club kid. She might have noticed if someone strange was hanging around. She might have some kind of clue for me. Maybe she noticed someone asking about me or about tattoos in general, or just flashing around a creepy vibe while staring at girls with ink. Marcy might know something like that. But Marcy is 18. She's still just a kid, and I don't want to drag her into this. I don't want to get her involved in something so potentially dangerous. I mean, if she'd been at the gym with me last night, she'd be dead right now. I can survive an explosion. She can't. Yeah, I tell her. That's all I wanted. Just, checking in, getting your opinion. Well, thanks, she says with a genuine smile. I don't get asked my opinion on important stuff all that often. You're always off running around doing cool magic stuff, and I'm stuck at home trying to learn the basics and practicing in a way that won't get anybody hurt. Her smile disappears as she thinks of Michelle. It really wasn't her fault, and she knows it wasn't. She knows that Michelle didn't blame her, and she has no reason to feel guilty. But that's not how guilt works. It's not how blame works. When you blame yourself, no one can forgive you but you. And that's not likely to happen anytime soon. Even if the dead forgive you, you're still the one that has to live with it. By the way, be careful out there, okay? I tell her. I don't want to rope her into my potential serial killer victimhood, but I don't want her stumbling into something dangerous without realizing it. Things are still a bit on the wonky side of everything that happened, and I don't want to see you get hurt. Don't worry about me, she says, crossing her heart. I'm all about safety now. I won't do anything dangerous, I promise. That's not what I meant, but it might be the best I'm going to get.
Thank you. So, what was your favorite part to write in this book?
Um, my favorite parts of this book are either the oh god, there's a lot. I really like writing the attempts on Max's life or on AJ's life, the ways of testing out what kinds of things she did, and the especially the one that um, is a mistake. Um, and I really liked playing with her going back and forth on whether or not a certain character is the guy coming after her. Um, I I remember when we were in the editing and you were saying that she just seemed completely oblivious to the incredibly obvious killer. But yeah, I do want it to come off that AJ's not the greatest detective, but I don't want it to come off that she's oblivious. So we had to go back and make some of those things a little bit more subtle. But I really liked doing the kind of like an internal cat and mouse where she would figure it out and be like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's him. And then be like, but maybe it's not. And then go back and forth until finally it was like, oh, no, it definitely is. Um, so that was a lot of fun to write. And so was um, the kind of underlying plot that's going through the trilogy. Um, the, the little chords in the back of people's heads and the person who's puppeteering everything. Um, we get a little bit more of where that is and what that's going to and what that's going to mean. And that all comes to a head in the next one.
Can't wait. Well, any other comments about the book, about writing in general? Advice
Uh,
for the audience?
my hope is that people will uh, forgive AJ for being bad at as a detective when it's focused on her, and will like her as a character and just enjoy the world. Um, the best advice that I can give people writing is that your own voice is what makes it interesting, and that you are not going to sound like anyone else, and that's the point. Ideas are free. You can come up with 1,000 ideas in an afternoon. Um, so trying to be original in that way is a waste of time. But no one else can tell your story the way you can. Um, and that's why anybody who wants to write, I think, should and practice and discover their voice and tell the stories from their perspectives, because there's no other way that that perspective's ever going to exist.
Excellently put. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you to everyone in the chat for joining in. And once again, Virtues of Skin is available for pre-order. Of course, I've got it mirrored here, but you've got the book cover right there, and then there's your link to buy it online. Pre-order, it's coming out in less than a week. And
It's very exciting.
thanks for coming and have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. And thank you, everybody.